Hello, today I'm going to talk about a really important issue, and it's something that many of you have been writing to me about and asking me to do something about. And it's the important issue of our airfields and the threat to them, potentially an existential threat. So I'm going to talk about that issue briefly today and give you my thoughts. So a petition's just come out urging us all to sign it and say that we want to make all general aviation airfields in the UK Greenfield sites. Now, a bit of a issue a few years ago when Labour were in government, and they changed some planning guidance which meant that, generally speaking, airfields became brownfield sites, and people perceive that that has led to an increase in airfields being designated for housing, and that's a huge need in this country. We need more homes, but the downside of that is, of course, that people are looking at airfields because airfields are, generally speaking, not particularly profit making. Their owners are looking to reap the rewards of their investment over many years, and in some cases they can get houses built on them and earn lots of money. So this petition has come out and people are urging me to sign this petition. So I'm going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about my thoughts about airfields and what I think we can all do about it. The purpose of the flight though today is to take good old trusty India Victor off for its 50 hour slash 50 hour slash 6 month check. So that's the purpose of the flight. Let's get the engine started. Clear prop.
Golf from Mike Victor, request taxi VFR flight to Elmset, Echo Golf Sierra Tango 1 POB.
India Victor, right turn taxi, hold Echo 1, squawk 3767.
Right turn on taxiway, hold Echo 1, squawk 3767, Golf India Victor. So here is the petition on the web page there, and as you can see, it's got thousands of signatures already. I think if it gets 10,000, then a minister has to respond. It needs 100,000 signatures, I think, for it to be debated in the Parliament or something like that. I think the chances of getting 100,000 signatures is pretty low, given there are only 30,000 or so active pilots in the UK. I admire the intent, but I do question whether actually we've got a much bigger problem with our airfields and general aviation more generally, and this is one single part of that issue, one single part of that chain. And actually, talking to airfields as I do, I'm not sure all of them would want their airfields to be classified as Greenfield, because if they're classified as Greenfield, doesn't that make it harder for them to develop, to build new towers, facilities, runways, hangars even? So I'm not sure that that is necessarily the one pill that's going to solve this problem. As I say, I admire the people doing it. If you want to sign it, do go ahead, but actually I think we need something more fundamental to happen.
Later in this video, we'll speak to an aerodrome operator who says airfields may not be brownfield sites anyway, and he wants to seek clarification from the government.
Okay, temperatures and pressures are in the green. Got flaps up, got gear up, landing like 1,000 feet, coming back on the throttle, and levelling off at 1,400, coming back on the throttle to about 55% to be honest, and we're just picking up the railway line, which is what we need to track now, going outbound to Godstone Station. It's trimming forward to prevent us climbing as the aircraft builds speed. What a lovely day. Actually, it's the first time I think I've flown off the grass this season, and it's nearly May, so that shows you how wet it's been. The grass has been out of action until now, but it was actually quite a good smooth departure for the grass here, I'd say. So the threats to aerodromes are wide and varied. I think one of the biggest threats to aerodromes is viability and affordability and profitability. They are just so expensive to run, The market is very depressed in general aviation. I don't know if you've noticed how many fewer of us are flying now than we used to. I mean, looking at the figures from a recent report, it looks like numbers have halved in 10 years, the numbers of people flying. And airfields can't survive on nothing, and we're all very sensitive to price, so if airfields put up the cost of landing and parking and hangarage and everything else, we all complain. I mean, just to take a look at the recent debacle up in Scotland around the Highlands and Islands Airport Limited, I think it's called, Hyle, who operate a lot of the islands airports, Inverness, and then some of the islands like Islay, probably Campbelltown as well. And you can imagine those island airports must cost a fortune to run in the middle of nowhere. Difficulty attracting staff, having to maintain the facilities, and not a vast amount of valuable traffic coming in. They put up their fees very dramatically. You know, we're talking many times greater than they were, and the GA community is up in arms about it now. So what do we do? What about this petition? Is the petition going to solve that problem? Not really. What about government? Can we ask government to solve the problem? Well, a few years ago, probably 3 years ago now, I interviewed the then government minister, Robert Courts, and this was the first question I asked him and his reply.
I think one of the biggest issues facing general aviation in the UK is the viability and future of our aerodromes. We're seeing so many of them disappearing and very fast. How are you going to stop them being lost to housing estates?
Well, the first thing to say, I think, is that in what we're releasing is the general aviation roadmap. What we want to achieve is to make the UK the best place in the world for general aviation. The best place in the world for general aviation.
The General Aviation Awareness Council, I think, estimates somewhere between 30 and 40 aerodromes are currently at threat, many of those from housing developments. And we saw a change in the planning landscape some time ago, long before you were in office, that saw aerodromes classified as brownfield sites, which led to a rush, I think, of local authorities seeing them as ripe for development. What can we do with our planning laws, which I think is also in your roadmap to investigate? What can we do with planning laws to make sure that aerodromes aren't the first choice of places to go to build, big estates?
So one of the first things that has been achieved is that airfields, their importance is already recognised in the planning policy guidance. I mean, that's something that we managed to get in, as you say, long before I was a minister in any event. So we've managed to do that through the all-party parliamentary group for general aviation. That was a big success some years ago now, but it's constantly making sure that everybody understands how critically important they are, so that local businesses understand that this is exactly what you want nearby, is a general aviation airfield where people can get air experience and where people can get experience of flying, and making sure that councils understand them as well, that this is something that we need. We have to have airfields where people can go and fly, where they can get technical experience, because that contributes to this wider high-tech economy that we want so much. And from our own perspective, as I say, the advisory fund that we've set up, offering advice to over 90 airfields as to how they can grow, how they can thrive, is critical from our perspective as well.
So they were talking about the GA roadmap, they were talking about a network of general aviation aerodromes, they were talking about the Aerodrome Advisory Fund. What's that done? What has any of that done? We don't have a network of aviation aerodromes. The advisory fund, according to the aerodromes I spoke to, wasn't particularly useful, and it clearly hasn't helped, because even with their supposed GA roadmap, we're still losing airfields left, right and centre. Another one, I think Nottingham Tollerton is the latest to be threatened with closure. And every time an airfield is threatened with closure, people write to me and email me, come on John, you've got to step up and report this, talk about it, shout about it. I honestly would if I thought it would make an ounce of difference. A lot of the times these are private businesses, private landowners. They can frankly do what they want. They do not care what little old flying reporter has to say. I share your frustration. Don't think that my silence or inability to jump on a campaign means that I don't care. I am as frustrated and as angry as you are about the situation. There are already organisations out there that do look at this. The General Aviation Awareness Council, for example, was set up, I think, predominantly for this reason, and I have a lot of time for them. They do a lot of work behind the scenes to help airfields with the issues that they have. and their overriding aim is to help airfields stay open. But despite all their hard work, they haven't succeeded. The airfields keep closing, and no more are being built.
One thing I think each of us should do if we're concerned about the state of general aviation in the UK is join a representative body. I'm a member of AOPA, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. They meet with the CAA and government officials and support airfields with the issues they face. They have also provided some funding for the General Aviation Awareness Council that has been campaigning on the plight of our airfields. I'll be honest with you, I'd like you to join AOPA because they support the work that I do, and they offer my followers a 25% discount off new 1- and 2-year memberships. The link to that discount is on the screen and in the video description. But if you don't join AOPA, find a representative body that is better suited to you and your flying. The more support organisations like AOPA have, the more work they can do for us. In a moment, we'll hear from the new chairman of the Airfields Working Group on the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Aviation. They've supposedly had a bit of a reboot, and they think that the airfields might not actually be classed as brownfield sites after all.
Watersham approach, Golf at Bravo Mike, India Victor, request max penetration. So Watersham isn't responding, so we're going to have to make standard traffic calls. So I'm going to announce my intentions on the Watersham frequency here with the call sign traffic, Watersham traffic now. Watersham traffic, Golf Bravo Mike, India Victor is a Piper Arrow, overhead Colchester, altitude 2,700 feet, inbound to Elmset, estimate Elmset at time 4:09er. Watersham traffic. So we've got 10 miles to go, we've got 2.5 to lose, 2.5, 5, 7.5. We probably want to start coming down, to be honest. And we've got 150 knots. That's going to make 150 knots, 1500, so 750 feet per minute. Right, I think I've got the runway from here. Watersham traffic, Golf Bravo Mike India Victor is a Piper Arrow on a 5-mile final, runway 05 at Elmset. Watersham traffic. Brakes, undercarriage mixture, fuel, landing light, RP direction indicator, altimeter, reds, blues and 3 greens. Watersham traffic, Golf Bravo Mike India Victor is a Piper Arrow, short final, runway 05, Elmset. Watersham traffic. Birds. I was about to go around then, and then the birds decided to go. Loads of them on the runway there were. Okay, so here we are at Elmset. I shall taxi off here, and then we can continue our conversation. It's busy up here, a bit of a traffic jam with all the aircraft parked up here today. I don't know where I'm going to go. Now this is interesting. Literally just landed, letting the engine cool down, and I've got a press release from the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Aviation. I haven't heard anything from them in months. Press release states, the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Aviation, Airfields Working Group, are pleased to announce a new start for 2024. Well, most of us started 4 months ago, with most of the members changed, and with it Aerodrome operator participation now represents a majority ranging from small grass strips to large licensed airports. The group will be chaired by Matt Wilkins. Now Matt is a good friend of this channel, runs Old Buckenham Airfield, so I've got a lot of time for Matt. He's interested in general aviation. He's a bit of a Marmite character, and I think Matt would even agree with me on that. The revitalised group will be tackling various topics with a new agenda. Aerodromes unite, it says. It sounds like something out of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Aerodromes unite! I think whoever's written this press release is trying very hard. Right, I need to come off my hobby horse and shut the engine down.
So I was feeling a little bit embarrassed about being so sceptical about all of this, and that email that I got from the APPG. So it's funny, Matt who was mentioned in that email, messaged me shortly after I received that email to make sure I'd got it. And I thought, well, Matt, could you come on the programme, the YouTube, and let's talk about it? And he's with me now. Matt, so what role are you now, chair of the working group, is it?
It's quite a lengthy title, to be honest, John. Yes, so I am the chairman of the Airfields Working Group of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Aviation.
Now, I was a bit sceptical, and I was saying, we haven't heard much from the APPG for ages. You know, we've been promised this network of airfields. Nothing's come of it. I just wonder now, you know, we've got this petition going on. We've just seen that you've regrouped. Can we suddenly expect some magic to appear in the next few months and all of our airfields will be saved and viable and profitable and so on?
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? What we know, what the press release makes very clear, is the number one priority is planning. I'd love to tell you that there is a miracle bullet that means that all aerodromes will be saved immediately, but it's a little bit more complex than that. And this petition, which actually came slightly out of the blue, but is estimable, not the same, and very popular, does raise one of the main points that we have to tackle immediately in relation to planning, which is very simply that we don't believe that airfields are actually brownfield in the first place.
Oh.
If the result of the petition and indeed our work is that the government then clarifies that no, they're not actually brownfield, then that is useful and beneficial, because assuming that they are is no real good to any of us. Also, you touched on the subject of the network, and there are various different bits of work that were done on behalf of the DFT. One was about 20 years ago, but actually ongoing in the background and not part of the APPG's work until now is a initiative called the Strategic Airfield Network, which Anne Bartleby, along with Louise Southern of the VFR Flight Guide, have been embarking on essentially by themselves as a standalone initiative. And so far they have a huge take-up and a huge number of aerodromes, and we're looking to assist by getting more to do so, who are being asked the question, do you think you are strategically important or useful? If so, tell us why. And the aim of that is not to say, right, well, this wonderful aerodrome with millions of pounds worth to invest with runway lights and precision approaches, well, that's strategically important, sod everyone else. That's not the idea at all. There are some instances whereby you'll have the only aerodrome serving an entire region that doesn't have any of those things, but is clearly strategically important. Those that are very popular, those that offer flight training, etc., etc. It's basically a piece of work that is the most contemporaneous and frankly intelligently approached way of looking at all of these things. And the net aim of that, aided hopefully by the airfield working groups in lobbying, for want of a better expression, will be to start to construct the bedrock of what is a strategic airfield network, clue being in the title.
How will you judge success of this group? You know, everyone, I don't know if you feel this, Matt, and you're in the community as well as I am. I get the sense that everyone is now sick to the back teeth of this issue. And yeah. people are ready to go out on the streets about this, it sometimes feels. I'm getting emails and messages all the time about it.
Indeed. And again, you know, I'm not going to overpromise and underdeliver. I know what the bounds are. I think there are. It's an interesting juxtaposition at the moment. So obviously, right now we are aware of potential threats to Popham, which is just enormously popular and you know obviously needs protecting. And the irony
of it is, Matt, that the manager of Popham is a DFT aviation advocate. Whose prime objective was to set up a strategic network of airfields. That was his priority. And as much as, you know, we're talking here about Mike Pearson, who's a wonderful guy. He's done an awful lot for the community. You will know him well. But that's the irony of the situation, that if it can happen at Popham, where you've got someone like that there, it can happen to any of us.
Indeed, it can. And of course, there are particular factors surrounding Popham, and I am certainly not an expert in it. But obviously, in that particular instance, you have essentially a tenant, the airfield, who want to carry on with aviation. And from what I understand, an owner who wants to see it in a local plan for development. That is something that is an extraordinarily difficult thing to fix. And it's not quite as easy as just saying, right, all aerodromes are protected. It doesn't really particularly work like that. And there is a phased approach. I mean, you asked what the definition of success would be. Well, first of all, and looking at it from a planning point of view, and this is something that we're trying to do across various different things, and there are an awful lot of groups hanging around the place as well. But actually, where it starts is let's try and make it as difficult as possible for someone to make a planning application at an aerodrome. Well, that's a difficult thing to do when the person making the application is the owner.
And it's a private owner. They're entitled to do what they want with their land in essence, aren't they?
They are indeed. And if you're going to look around and say, well, actually, what we need to do is essentially enforce this particular planning restriction on aerodromes and the surroundings of aerodromes, because it's not just a case of, well, yes, let's make this aerodrome a housing estate, but it's also, well, what about let's plonk a 5G mast up on an extended centre line of an aerodrome. We have to be extremely careful on a case-by-case basis because it is a parliamentary construct. So if we have a specific case, then the MP for that area has to essentially give their assent for it to be mentioned. But strategically and overall and theoretically, it's entirely within our gift to be discussing it and then to advise this large group of politicians who then in turn are hopefully have the ear of government. Obviously, we all know about politics and the parties and so forth. It's not immediately clear, but it is part of what is a concerted effort across many groups that really seeks ultimately to make it extremely difficult for anyone wanting to put a planning application in that's going to impinge on an aerodrome.
I really don't want this to come across as me being bitchy and knocking back people who are trying to do good. The petition's great, fine. The APPG, it'll do its thing in the fullness of time. It has done things. There have been things that have come out of these bodies, really good things. Planning changes, for example. The General Aviation Awareness Council doing really busy work behind the scenes, trying to keep things going. AOPA, the BMMA, the British Gliding Association, everyone's doing their bit, but isn't it time for us all to come together now and fight as one united voice? Is that such a hard thing to do? I don't know. I think I'm going to stop my ranting for today. You remember, I've had blood pressure issues. And reading about some of this stuff does make the blood pressure rise. So I'm going to go and see the gang now at Aero Anglia and get India Victor checked in for its maintenance. I always bring donuts for the team here. Other brands of donuts are available.
Are we being filmed again?
Brought you lunch. Hey Aidan, how are you? Yeah, not too bad. I'm bringing gifts. You gonna turn mine around in the day then?
Yeah, but not this day.